Welcome back to another video today. So in today's video, I'll be going over a few examples of leveraging volume profiles. So I won't deep dive into an introduction of volume profile. If you have any questions on volume profile, you can take a look on my previous video that I've uploaded here, and you can take a look before you start this video. So in today's video, mainly we'll be taking into example on going over what I've been leveraging when I take an entry and look for entry to my trade. And I think it doesn't matter if you're a SMNC, supply and demand, or resistance and trend lines, or whatever ICT that you trade. This concept works for everything. So the main reason I'll go over it with this is volume profile is something that is essentially covering at each level of price, where how much volume transact between the bid and ask, right? That's already been transacted through. So that essentially cannot be mitigated. You cannot ignore that, whatever the market has already been put in place. So if, for example, typically in my trading, I don't use what a lot of ICT traders call fair value gap. Look for an volume void, or an SMNC trader, or supply and demand. I don't really dive into that. I only use that as confluences. So I'll kind of go top-down analysis on what I do on a day-to-day entry. So let's take a look of today. So today's Monday. So on a Monday, this is the 1 hour time frame, and we can jump to 4 hour first. So on the 4 hour, we are already been breaking all-time high. So we broke all-time high last Friday, and then today we broke another high during the pre-market session. So typically in these days, most people will be hesitant to continue long since we're continuing all-time high, but it's also hard to take a short entry because you're essentially just gonna might be trying to pick the top, but you're never gonna pick the top. So I don't ignore. In this case, I will remain to my bias of overall structure market. But first thing I'll dive into during the pre-market of this session is I'll leverage the fixed volume profile. So I'll grab from the Asia Opens all the way till pre-market. So all this time, so you can see here, what I leverage here is I like to look for low volume nodes. So there's one here that sticks out like a sore thumb. As you can see, how price reacted on here, right? So if you take a look, this is essentially where I'll place my limit order, but I don't just blindly use this. I'll use other confluence. So let's take a look at going back to the higher time frame of 1 hour, right? So we can remove this fixed volume profile. Now we identify this and see how cleanly it lined up exactly to the T of there is an ICT you call a fair value gap or a volume void that you can enter. And there's also a order block here, bullish order block, that it never even touched it. So if you're trading order block, those wouldn't have triggered your entry. And if you do OTE, this also lines up. So mainly what I use, I don't really look for fair value gap. I mainly use order block, or what some people call supply and demand, and then I use OTE and then just volume profile. So this is pretty much all I use. Fair value gap can be sometimes inaccurate, and I think if you're trading, I wouldn't say inaccurate, but I would say for trader, a lot of times is very subjective. So what I mean by that is there might be multiple fair value gap and you don't know which one to use, and some trader figure out which one to use and which one doesn't. But if you're struggling with identify the correct fair value gap or when's the right time to entry, this might give you a insight on when you should be entering. The reason I say, again, highlight here, using a volume profile, right? This is you only leveraging this tool to essentially give you a guideline on how many transaction has been put through at each level. So you can see here at these levels, these are essentially, you can view it as strong resistance or strong support. These are where a lot of volume gets transacted through, right? So that means price spend a lot of time here going back and forth between that buyer and seller, right? And then what we mentioned in previous videos is this is the volume, the point of control. So this is where price will always tend to draw towards, and this is also the zone where this is the volume node high, this is the volume node low, where price 70% of the price will trade between zone, and then price will always gravitate towards the point of control before moving out. So you can, it's always a pull and tug between price action. So as it goes up outside of this fair values, will pull back down into this fair value price or point of control, and then fill these value nodes before moving higher if the market is bullish, right? So that's also one thing you take account. You need to know what's the market structure looking for. This is I only manage you leverage the volume profile as when I go down to lower time frame and look for trades, okay, for my entry. So let's take a couple more look on the next day. So here we can take a look on previous day, same thing. You can see this is a little bit tough. It's not as obvious, but you can see there are two zones that is low profile here, and then you also have around like here, right? But these are the places where there's low profile. So with this, you can't really say, oh, this will be the entry, or this will be entry. This is where I leverage order confluence as well. So let me go into the higher time frame. So we can see the higher time frame, there's a fair value gap that lined up here around this zone. But you can see how this price went past the fair value gap. Well, the wick passed it, so the wick does the damage. This will have you wouldn't have taken a loss, but your risk will be a little bit bigger on this. So in my case, on these days, I typically will take using OTE on type of days. So you can use OTE, and you can see you kind of mitigate a lot of your risk. I will put my entry always at OTE, so I'll put my entry at here. Also, there's a little bit higher volume nodes here. So typically this, if it does react here, it doesn't go to this volume nodes to fill this void. It will just reject here. So line it up and then target the high of this and 2R, right? So this will end up going through close to 3R, I believe. Yeah, 2.9 RR essentially, but let's aim for 2R. This would have been a trade, one and done, right in the beginning of the market. So this essentially gives you a better storytelling of once you identify where the price is going to go, where the market structure is going to go, you look for an entry that fill those volume voids, and then you low volume nodes to continue the direction it's going. It's always going to, the reason for it, right? How you can view volume profile works like this. As price move out of the point of control, and also this is where these two lines of this box I was highlighted here, yellow. So this box here, right, it means this is 70% of the price that's traded, where price is for the market at the current time. This is the fair price that price will trade towards, right? So once the price pull outside of this fair price, it will always pull back, fill those unfilled order, those fill void, those low volume nodes or volume voids. This is when the price will pull back into it and then fill those unfilled order, because these are bearish sentiment, right? When the bearish move very fast, you will create these gaps of volume or low volume, which just means the price jump from point A to point B very fast, and the price will tend to always come back and fill this void before continuing the direction it was. Okay. Now let's take a look. So we take a look on the past few days. Let's just take a random day and we can take a look. So let's take on this day here. So this is September 25th. We have a clear downtrend move, and then something to highlight. So let's give it a backward over here. So let's say we're aiming for fair value gap. So there is a fair value gap over here. So I'm looking at a 1 hour. So this is the 1 hour time frame. There is a fair value gap. I highlighted here. If people are aiming for fair value gap to fill this for entry, for continued lower, they will never get the entry. And I'll show you why, right? And this is why I don't just leverage. I don't blindly use fair value gap or at least look for these void to get filled, because there's no, that is subjective, right? You can choose any gap. You can choose a gap down here, much lower, you don't know. So what I tend to do is I'll take this high all the way to this low. So this is essentially internal rotation of price, or you can just take it from this high. It doesn't matter. You can see there is a low volume nose over here, right? This essentially will be your entry that you want to look for. And then you can leverage any OTE you want from the high to top. This is within the OTE zone. Let me mark that out. So this is our OTE zone. You can use that as a entry. And then, but on this day, I did trade it on this day. Let me remove this since I already marked it. On this day, what I did leverage is this one. Here's order block. And it tapped into the T, right? So this is a breaker block. And going down to 5 minutes, right? So I'm looking at 5 minutes. This is to the T, right? You can leverage any of these confluence, so your entry can be anywhere inside this box of OTE that has confluence, right? So you have the nodes here that you can see the price went up here and rejected right away, the volume nodes, but my entry didn't go right here, right? Because I know if I enter here, my risk is too big, and I want the price to push up into further into the breaker in this form of liquidity. So my entry was around on this day right here, close to this. You can see there's a wick, and my stop was outside this breaker block, target of 2RR down here, and then rest I let it run to, I think it was close to 4, yeah, close to 4. But you can see how this gave you a better insight on where the price will reject. You can see a price reject here, and then let's say once the price reject here, and then you move the fixed volume nodes, continue including these block, you can see it show you the volume nodes move up to high over here. So as the price go, this will be your new volume nodes, low volume nodes that you put your entry towards, right? So in short, I think this will be, if you find this helpful, incorporate this, try incorporating and backtest this into your trading. What I suggest on leveraging is always find your first overall sentiment of the day, which is your market structure bias, whether it's towards the buy side or sell side, or a continuation day, momentum day, whatever how you want to structure it. You need to always identify that and then leverage the volume profile to see from either the day before or a significant high to a significant low. And typically I just leverage the pre-market. Since I trade in the New York section, I leverage the pre-market section. And then once the market open, I trade pretty much only from 9 to 11:30. So during these 2 hour and a half time frame, I look for these volume nodes that line up with confluence such as OTE, breaker block, or what you call fair value gap. But I don't ever use fair value gap or inversions. I find them very, very subjective. Some people might work very great as for you, but I think if you really take a deep dive into it, you will understand why volume profile makes so much sense, since these are something you cannot ignore. These are orders that has been executed through the market. You cannot hide them. There's no dark pool on the back that you can hide this. This is public information. So there's no reason for you to now leverage what's already given to you, which is the volume, and it tells you a lot of story on where the market is going to bounce or reject, and those will be your supply and demand zone or support and resistance. Okay. So hopefully this is helpful, and if you find this helpful, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I will put more other education video outs that will be helpful for your tradings. And then please take a look if you have any question with the how to leverage this volume profile. You can take a look on my previous video. Other than that, stay safe and happy trading.